Hello, folks. We're starting our very last Instagram live for the month of financial literacy. I'm gonna put this on mute. Hi, Lucas. Hi, Nick. I see you folks joining in. Just waiting for folks to get the memo on our last live of the month, which is kind of nuts to think November's already done. I'm Imani Nasruddin, and I'm the Chapter Relations Coordinator here at Advocis. It's definitely been a very busy month for us. Hi, Jackie. Definitely been a very busy month for us here, doing a lot around financial awareness, financial literacy. In case you've missed our Instagram lives, we've been doing them every single week for the month of November. We have them all on our Financial Advice for All website, including our latest panel discussion. It's a podcast, super great, and our very own initiative around JFA, where you could see the thoughts of children across the nation and what they think about their finances. It's super cute. If you haven't yet watched it, do it up. It is on our website. You can also take a look at our link in the bio. It'll immediately direct you to our website. I see our guest has joined us. Let's go here. We're going to go live with a minute. Let's see here. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm glad this worked. Can you hear me? I can hear you. I can see you fine. So it's perfect.
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful. Well, I know folks are going to start coming on to the call, into the live, I should say, very shortly. But we've got about 4 individuals on. Before I dive in and ask how you are, I wanted to say congratulations because you were the gold winner of the Advocis Young Achievers Award this past September. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a nice surprise, especially. Yeah, it's nice to have those types of good news and celebrate those wins during COVID because we don't get a lot of positive news lately. So, yeah.
Oh, and you know what? Here we are this week talking about life events too. So that's a big topic to kind of speak about, and some that are, kind of exciting and some that, might not be as great to talk about, but we're going to dive into all of these details because life events is a huge, topic to talk about. And there's a lot of finances that go into these kinds of events that many people don't account for. So absolutely. I'm glad to have you here with us to kind of talk about this, and we'll definitely touch upon some more good news, hopefully near the end of the call. So Kalee, I wanted to kind of ask you in terms of our, for example, JFA initiative that we've been doing. It's definitely been really eye-opening to see what their thoughts around finances and how much adults make. And it's kind of funny to see the responses. But based on your experience and your expertise, what are your thoughts about children saving money for their future life events like college or moving out?
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you guys were doing that initiative because I always talk about financial literacy. So I love that it's Financial Literacy Month. This gets more people paying attention to it. But it starts early, and it's so important that we start talking to our kids about it. And I mean, we can start early as, I have a 6-year-old, so starting as early as 5 or 6 years old to have these conversations. So it's something I talk about all the time. We don't have enough in like the formal education curriculum. I think progress is being made for sure, but it still has a long way to go. So as parents, it's where we can get involved. We can start, taking that active role, supporting our children learning about money through the years. So starting as early, like I said, as 5 or 6 years old, all the way up until their teen years when they're starting to work jobs and things like that. It's so powerful what we can do. And then at that point, like as we're sort of helping them along the way, developing this foundation, then when they do reach those preteen years, teen years, when they have their first job, that's not as overwhelming if they've kind of gotten these lessons along the way. So I say for parents, always to be talking to your kids about money, keep it age appropriate, but make sure that you're getting involved, you're having these conversations, have it an activity that you guys talk about together. So anything you can do. I wrote an article called like Raising Money Savvy Children. So that I give like ideas for different age ranges on some of the ways you can teach your kids. And I also have a podcast called Raising Money Savvy Kids. So lots of ideas there too.
I was going to let folks know about that too, for sure. I know it's super exciting to kind of see those thoughts and those kind of conversations happening more often than not now because of, in light of COVID, these conversations have like really brought, that idea home that we need to talk about the finances. And there's, starting at 6 might sound like, oh my God, I'm going to talk to my 6-year-old about finances, but it's really not a bad idea because, like, to your point, they won't be as overwhelmed when they, face their first job and money. And it's like, it's kind of great to see that these convos are happening, and our JFAs really showed us that we need to continue to have these conversations.
Absolutely. And even with you might not get it. Like my 6-year-old said, I'm going to go to the bank and give them $100 and they'll give me $1,000. And I was like, oh, that's not quite how it works. But I mean, she's getting it and she's starting to get the concepts. And she wrote on her Christmas list that she wanted $1,000. Again, I'm like, oh, okay, Ivy, like, let's be realistic.
In a couple of years from now if you invest it properly.
Exactly. So it's like, it's little things where they're starting to bring it up, and then you can have the conversations and kind of bring them back into reality, I guess, in my daughter's case. But it's fun. Good conversations to have.
They're great, and definitely I've had I've had a chuckle watching the videos too. They're very cute to kind of see, like, oh, an adult makes $1 billion. I'm like, no, they don't really, but
not quite.
Unless we're Jeff Bezos, but anyways, that's not the case here. We're looking at life events. There's so many to talk about. And for me this year, at least, I don't know why, but, even with the pandemic, it seems that all my friends decided to get married this year and have their weddings. And, COVID wedding is different kind of wedding compared to the usual. So when you think of a life event like marriage, that's a huge, there's a lot of finances tied to that. What are your advice in terms of couples saving up for this big day? Because for those who don't know, weddings actually cost quite a bit. So any tips, tricks on saving up for this big day?
Yeah. And I mean, first, I'll probably be like some people's enemy by talking about this because I'm like the finance person. So I'm like, don't spend too much on your wedding. But I mean, to give some perspective, well, I think like with everything that's going on with COVID, that has given us, some perspective on some of these life events, because some people had weddings planned and they had the best laid plans for these big extravagant weddings. And, you've had to adapt and change. So if you have had a wedding during everything that's gone on, you've probably really had to, adjust, make maybe smaller version of what you had thought, but it was still probably just, as well received, and it was still that special day, and you married your life partner, and it still has all that joy to it. So I want to remind people of that. Maybe we've gotten some perspective on, it doesn't have to, maybe hit those like dreams that we had when we were young, where it was like very big, audacious dreams for this glamorous wedding. So that doesn't have to be the way it is. And I went to a wedding this summer, and all very like adhering to the COVID rules, and it was a smaller gathering, but it was great. Like, it was a great wedding. And so I would say first off, for people just to get some perspective and remember, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to feel the pressure to make it some really big event. And even from a family and friends perspective, I think like when we go to weddings, or when we're, having our loved ones get married, we want what's best for them. Like, as someone going to a wedding, I would rather see the couple, have a really awesome trip of a lifetime, or pay for a down payment on their first house together. Like, that's really what I would love to see for the couple. So remembering to, and just that, financial stress is a big part of relationship stress. So making sure when you are planning for a wedding, that you're both on the same page, because you don't want to put yourself in that scenario where there is any sort of stress, financial stress, or if one person had one expectation, the other one had a very different expectation, and if it puts you in debt like that. So be realistic, work together. Like, I would strongly suggest couples get together, communicate about it, talk about it together, plan together. So you will want to create a budget, because as we know, with all our best laid plans, sometimes, it can get a little bit beyond what we originally had thought. And so if we have a budget, we have some perspective on what's realistic, what we can afford, or what we're saving up for. And then we have these categories of, okay, we're going to spend this much on, these type of expenses like food, and this much on the venue and things like that. So making sure that you have those buckets, and if something goes over budget, you're going to have to give up from a different bucket to accommodate. So rather than say, oh well, we've spent far more than we planned, make sure that you are just being diligent with that budget and sticking to it, and you're both on the same page. And when you're making these wedding ends, I would say bring in the planning for like other future goals. So as a couple, what other goals do you have together beyond your wedding? Is it buying a house within 2 years' time? It's starting a family, and you have sort of an idea of when you might want to be doing those things. Because as you're starting to think of these medium term and longer term goals together, it might help you kind of put perspective on, okay, we can't really afford to spend much more than this on a wedding because we do really want to be able to have that down payment saved up in the next 2 to 3 years so we can buy our first house together, or whatever that looks like. So make sure that you're sitting down and kind of planning all those goals, and it helps give you perspective, I think.
No, I really like that piece of advice for sure, because even last week we were talking about planning and goal setting, which is important and super crucial when you're finances, and kind of bringing this, yes, you're planning for one life event, which is your wedding, but at the same time, it's like we need to bring in other life events into this too, because we don't want to be in the hole for this from this event, and we can't afford to put a down payment on a house in the future, or condo, or whatever it is, right? So that's huge. And I think this dovetails nicely into a sub question I have around this topic. And it's about, when you have a couple or someone coming together after like their wedding, you have two different kinds of lifestyles almost, you would say, like the money spending habits coming together. Do you have any advice for folks that are like, moving in together or now starting a life together, and how they can kind of meet halfway or somewhere around the lines, like bridge their expenses and their lifestyles together, I guess? So how conversations go?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question, because what you usually find is it's like you get the two, like sometimes like polar opposites, like the super saver and someone who doesn't really track or know how much they save. And I just find to see like the differences between the two, because that's not necessarily a criteria for why we pick our life partners, that they have the exact same financial habits as us. So we're getting into this, we're coming together, and there's a joint element here, and so we still have to work on getting on the same page. So I think it's really key to just be communicating, and with that too, that both are involved. So maybe one is like, the finance guru of the couple, and they're like, I know this stuff, don't worry, I got this. And I'm all about dividing and conquering when, in life, and for efficiency and, just to make things easier. But still, when it comes to finances, I always say to people, you both have to be involved, because you have to be on the same page. Way too many times I'm seeing, scenarios where something happens, a major life event that was unexpected, and if there was one person that wasn't as involved, they can be, left really not knowing what to do or where they were at, really blindsided, and it's not a situation you ever want to see. So if you can always be coming together, communicating, both being involved, one can sort of do more of the day-to-day, but you still have to have those check-ins where you're saying, okay, so what is going on? Where are we at? So a great idea that I talk about in some of my sessions too is like set a money date. So have a date, maybe it's once a month, and you guys come together and you talk about money, and you can make it fun. Maybe you can add some wine or something like that to it, because probably a money date, you're like, that doesn't sound like my favorite idea for a date, but it's a good opportunity to just set a specific time. That way, if there's things you want to talk about or thinking about, you're like, oh yes, okay, we're talking about this next Friday. I'm going to write this down for part of our conversation. And it's an opportunity for you to bring up maybe topics that aren't necessarily comfortable, because sometimes money and finances aren't comfortable to talk about. So if you set this date and time, and that's what is going to be discussed, then maybe it will get that comfort level up to have these conversations.
I actually love that idea. I love having a money date. So instead of like, your little Friday TJF Friday kind of like dates out for dinner, no, let's have like once a month. I like that, to set down like, here's a money date where we're gonna bring in some wine, bring in some cheese, bring in whatever it is, and talk about the serious matters here. Like, I know that, again, it's a life event that's happy, this one here, I guess, but it does come with a lot of serious conversations that need to, happen. And to the point that you made as well, you don't want something to go on and one partner not be as prepared as the other, or informed, or, I do like this idea, and I hope everybody tuning in has kind of taken that one away. For sure.
And you don't have to have a couple, like you can have a money date by yourself too. So if you're independent, not in a relationship, have your own money date. So it's still, you're giving time back to your money. We spend a lot of time earning money. We don't spend enough time giving back to our money, I think.
I know, like I like at the end of the month or whenever I get my, like, this is my personal kind of way I look at my finances. Whenever I get my statement for my credit card bill, I like to set, I didn't never call it a money date, but I'm going to start calling it that now
Yeah,
between myself and this piece of paper where I'm like, oh, I'm spending too much money on food. But anyways, it is what it
yeah,
is. But I
yeah.
think that that's a great way to kind of check in, whether it's with yourself or check in with your partner or check in with, if you're like with your family or whoever it is, to kind of have that conversation at least once a month is really important. And I think that that's great. I think we might be paused. Kalee, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Just wanted to give a thumbs up. You know, tech happens, but it's all good. We're going to make this up. So another kind of question we had here is, you know, we've been talking extensively about 2020 and the year that it's been. A lot of, you know, it's 2020 has been a life event in and itself. Kind of the entire year has just been, you know, it's the year that keeps on giving kind of thing. So for small businesses and businesses out there and individuals really, with everything that's kind of happened, and no matter what kind of hit or, you know, benefit that they've taken on from this time, do you have any pieces of advice to kind of give these people on how to sort out expenses during this time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. It's if like we haven't been impacted directly work-wise, I'm sure we know someone who has very close to us or family members, things like that. So it's been quite a year for that, and it's been challenging to see. So that's a great question. And I think to break it down, there's kind of a few steps to that. So starting off, I would say for people to develop that awareness. So I talk about, you know, we need to do things like a budget and a net worth statement for sake of awareness. So it's not the funnest task in the world. I will agree with that. But if we can do, you know, if you have been impacted, if you can do a budget of a past month to just have that awareness of, okay, what am I spending? What does my monthly expenses look like? And then a net worth statement. Where am I? Where do I stand as of my assets, liabilities? So that's step one, is that awareness piece. And that's going to lead into step two, which I would say is more of like your forward looking plan. So if COVID has impacted you, maybe you lost a job, or maybe, yeah, your business isn't earning as much as, you know, it had been, then it's forward planning is, okay, now we look back at those awareness tools, the budget, and say, okay, this is where I was spending. I need to really sort of hunker down, cut some expenses. What can be easily eliminated? So go through those line by line items. And then maybe there's things like subscriptions that we're not actually using. Maybe there's, you know, creative changes we can make, luxuries we can scale back on. Maybe it's, you know, looking at it, like I said, this Year's presentation, because New Year's resolutions, people always want to spend less, but I think it very much applies to this scenario too. So I went through my own and said, okay, I don't actually use a subscription. So you cut back things, bundled like my insurance, because I had it sort of, my car insurance was separate from my home. You bundle it together, you get some discounts sometimes. So looking at things like that and really sort of creating this like COVID budget essentially on what can we realistically, what is the needs versus the wants. And so that's kind of your step two. And then step three is also kind of going back to that awareness piece, and it's looking at that network or understanding, taking that inventory of, okay, where do I stand? What do I have access to if I need money? So if I've lost my job and the CERB payments and whatnot are not enough, you know, what's going to make up the difference? And so maybe it's, well, I have an emergency fund. Great. You're probably going to tap into that, because that's why we've created something like an emergency fund. This very much would be considered an emergency. We didn't plan for this. Maybe it's, you know, an extra savings you had. Maybe it's your TFSA you have to start tapping into. So kind of breaking it down and seeing where are the sources, what might you need to be tapping into during this time? Because it's one thing to cut back expenses, but if there's ones that are fixed that aren't as easy to cut back on right away, then it's just understanding, you know, what can I utilize? And I remind people too, like, you know, if we have to tap into those sources that we wouldn't necessarily look at as, you know, ongoing income sources, those work too. So getting creative, if you have some home equity and you've lost jobs, maybe it is a matter of getting a secured line of credit against some of that equity or pulling out some equity, because if you can't make your month-to-month bills, if you can't afford food, that really would be a reason to tap into that. Or if you have RSP accounts, I know we utilize those for long-term retirement savings, but if you need that money, it's there for you. You're taxed on it when you pull it out, but if you're in a position where you're not working, you're probably in a lower tax bracket anyway. So it's not the worst thing. If you have to be using some of these sources, that's what we have to do. We're in unprecedented times. None of us really saw this coming. So, give yourself some grace and know that, if that's what you have to do, absolutely, then utilize those sources.
That's actually a great point that you made too, in regards to tapping into those savings, because that's what they're there for. A lot of people right now too, this is an emergency, like you said, for a lot of us that there's, I think we're paused, but we'll give a thumbs up if you can.
Oh, now I see it. Yeah, I was paused there, so I didn't hear what you said.
No worries. I was just saying that we are in a sense in an emergency. This is these are unprecedented times. I can't talk anymore, but definitely, there's no taboo around pulling out the money at this time, because I know usually people are saying like, oh, I can't touch that money until but this is the time for it. Kind of, if you find yourself in this boat where you can't make your monthly payments, or you haven't saved up enough in your emergency fund or anything. And to the point that you made around the government support, the CERBs and whatnot, how do you think people can bake that? I memean, that's not going to be here forever, kind of thing. So how do you think people can utilize that to the best, to the best of their abilities right now?
Yeah, well, make sure that you are applying for them. Like, if you are someone who would be eligible to receive them, again, make sure you're applying for those. I think the deadline for some of them is coming up for end of the year, and it might be ones that you can actually go back on for times that you would have been able to apply for those. So make sure you are utilizing those sources, because that's what they're there. Again, this isn't typical. Like, people, you could be the best employee of an organization, but if that organization can't afford to pay their employees, or is starting to have to cut back and almost maybe might go out of business, no matter how good of an employee you are, you're still not going to have a job. So we have some amazing people on the sidelines here that are out of work. So it's not anything you're doing. Like, it is just a scenario that is really out of our control.
No, that's a really great way to kind of bring it back. Like, it is, there are some things that are not within our control, and it just happens to be this pandemic was unplanned for. And I know a lot of people, if they did set up their goals from the start of the year, they have, like, just in case emergency happens, but maybe this one was a bit bigger than what they planned. But nonetheless, I think that, as if we continue to have these conversations, we'll come out a lot stronger from this time, for sure. And kind of on a lighter note, looking into the future, like, I'm coming back to the kids, and like, when we're looking at the future, because they are our future, if you think about it. And saving for parents that have children, like, whether or not it's starting to save this time or for the future, looking at their, whether or not they're going to go to college, whether they're going to go to university, or they're going to decide to pay for their entire, like, housing on campus, or whatever it is. How do you recommend for parents to save up for their children? And let's say, like, if they have more than one child, how would they sort out their expenses around saving up for their future?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, we have the ability to help our children out with their education savings. And I think that's a great role that us parents can play. And I think a lot of parents, when you have your child, it's like, yeah, I want the best for them, and I want them to, be able to follow their dreams and goals. So the best tool really that is available in Canada is an RESP account, so Registered Education Savings Plan. Those are great tools for parents to use. As you put money in, the government is matching at 20% with a grant. So it's a bit tricky on kind of the rules behind it, but they will match up to $7,200 over the life of the plan, and they match up to $500 per year, but you can make up for 1 year. So again, they're a little bit tricky sometimes when we're chatting about them. But again, essentially think of it as government matching your contributions at 20%. So right off the bat, it's essentially 20% gain on what you've put in. So they're a great tool for parents to use. You can have individual or family plans. You can have multiple children on those. Again, like, when parents are planning for education, I always remind parents, have a goal in mind. So you don't have to just, be putting money into this. But step one would be starting with, what do I want for my child, or what do I want to give them? Because there's no right or wrong answer. So some parents, it's, I want to pay a full 4-year degree. Some are, I want to help cover their first year of education. So start with that. What do you want to do? Because again, it's a gift. It's something nice to do for your child. It's not a requirement. So decide what that is, and that way you can plan accordingly. So rather than just kind of putting money away, have the goal first, and then we can work backwards and say, okay, how are we going to meet that goal? And then get your kids involved too in the conversations, especially in the teenage years when they're starting to plan to go to post-secondary. Make sure they're looking at their options, they're doing some budgeting, understanding, okay, how much would it cost if I went to this school versus if I went to this one, which would be away from home, and have them actually, sorting out those numbers. So if you say, like, I have saved up some money in an RESP for you to help you, but let's plan on how this is going to work, so we know how you're going to utilize this money. Are you going to have enough? Do you have to supplement some on your own? How will that look? So get involved with, get them involved in the conversation too. In the RESP, keep in mind you can be investing in there, so that's great, because then your money's growing even further. And just be mindful of your time horizon. So when your child's first born, if you start putting in money right away, you have a longer time horizon. You have about 18 years, so you can take a little bit of risk with those, or do some investing with that and hope for some growth in those early years. So that's another reason why these are great plans to have, because that's all tax sheltered. I always remind people to tell family members about it, because people like grandparents love to be able to get involved too. So I have so many clients that have grandparents put money into every month for their grandchild's education funding. So tell family members if it's a matter of they're wondering what to get your child for birthdays or Christmas, and they want to have put more of it towards something like that rather than some of the toys they have enough of. I think that's a great idea too. But again, remember that it's, it is a gift, and it's something you're helping your child with. So they can contribute as well, and that could be part of the plan, that they have to be involved. I'm speaking as someone who, I did a full 4-year degree and I paid my full way through, no loans whatsoever. I was raised by a single mom, so it wasn't affordable for her to help out at all. So it doesn't mean it's not possible for your child to do it on their own. But yeah, get them involved, do the planning early on so they know how that's going to look.
Right on. I really like that. And I love the fact that, get your kids involved in this. A lot of times parents are just kind of planning on the side. They don't really talk to their kids about it, but definitely once they get them involved, maybe pick their brain as to, do you want to live on campus? Do you want to stay at home? Do you want to, they'll help with the finances. And I like the idea of actually getting your kid to contribute maybe to the same plan, because trying to kind of get that attitude towards saving and starting soon, instilled in them at a younger age. And I think after our life, taking away one little piece of advice here in terms of an overarching theme here is it's never too early to start, I should say. So, whether it's you're saving up for your university or your degree or whatever it is, start early. Whether you're saving up for your wedding, start early, I guess. If you're saving for a house, start early. And I think that there's no harm in that, is what I'm taking away from everything you're saying about life events. And
yeah, exactly. Start early, do what you can, and plan for life events before they've happened. So if we do start early, then it just puts us in a better position for when these things come up, unplanned or planned, but events happen. And if we're, diligent all along the way, then maybe we're a little bit more prepared, or we're able to handle some of the stuff that comes at us. So that's an important piece with life events too, is we're kind of always planning for them. As financial advisors, we're always on the lookout for these, what could happen and what do we need to watch out for? And that's kind of what we're always sort of considering and thinking about.
I know, and I like the fact, we always sit here, like you said here, we're always planning for these life events. Well, I want my condo to look this way, or I want my wedding to look this way, or I want something to go this way, but we forget the finance part of it. We forget that there's a lot of money that gets tied into it. I think that the sooner we have these conversations, the more that'll be put into perspective, and what's attainable and what's not. Kalee, I want to talk to you again we have so much to talk about still, but we are down to our 30 minutes and want to kind of respect everybody's time. But I did want to extend the opportunity to anybody on the call right now to write in their comments or their questions. So if you have a question for Kalee, feel free to include it in the comment box, or that little Q&A feature you'll see at the bottom of your live screen as well. We're going to be here to answer those questions. And in the meantime, I know you got your podcast going on. So can you tease us with anything, new topics or any previous topics at all?
Yeah, it's called the Wealth and Wellness Podcast. So I love the sort of tie-in between our net worth and self-worth and how the two interact. I think there is such an important tie-in between the two. And, we can be earning a lot or be in a good position career-wise, but if we're, sacrificing our self-care and our personal lives, then, it's not that full, abundant life necessarily. So I chat about different wealth topics because I think that financial literacy piece is so important, but I also have guests on and talk about wellness topics that we can learn a lot from too. So it's fun. I love it. And I love sort of bringing the two together.
Yeah, I like that because you don't usually see those two paired together because not many people have been kind of taking it. Oh, that doesn't really relate to the finance, but it does. It really does. And I like the fact that you've got that going on. So I'll definitely check it out. And folks, I recommend everybody else too. It doesn't seem like I got any questions or comments, but that's always usually sometimes a good sign. Always usually a good sign.
Yeah.
So that means folks did take in a lot from our session. And folks, if you want to watch the replay, we're going to have it on our Instagram here, our Instagram account at advocis.tfac, as well as our www.financialadviceforall. That's Julie. Thank you so much, Julie. And folks, we look forward to seeing you on our future lives. This was it for the month. So Kalee, you were our last guest. And I think that we ended it off with a bang. Life events is always a great topic to talk about. So, and wish you lots of health and happy holidays to everybody too.
Yeah.
So start planning. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, start planning. Thank you so much for having me on. That's awesome. Thank you.
Take care, Kalee. Cheers, folks.